What is going on, everybody? Welcome to a deep dive into the number 20 team in my 2019 NFL Power Rankings, the Buffalo Bills, who are going to come in here 6-7 spots higher than ESPN NFL Network, who at 26 and 27 don't seem to be really giving this team much of a chance. For me, the Bills are coming in this third tier of teams that I might not necessarily pick to make the playoffs, and we'll get into that conversation towards the end of this video, but certainly a team that if they were able to get in would not surprise me. And there's a lot to talk about here on if they can finally put themselves in a position to push the Patriots here in the AFC East. So a lot of my optimism for this team, it really starts with the job that Sean McDermott and this coaching staff have done. I think Brian Daboll, Leslie Frazier here, the coordinators, did a really good job doing a lot with not a lot. You know, this roster is not very impressive, at least last year, but this team made a ton of improvements this offseason, and we've got a lot to talk about. So it's going to be a really fun deep dive. So if you enjoy, if you learn something as we go here, please do hit that like button. It really helps me out, helps support the channel. Share this video. Also subscribe so you don't miss any more installments of this series as we go through the rest of these teams. If you're shopping for tickets this summer too, use promo code ThatFranchiseGuy on SeatGeek. That's where I get all my tickets. You get the best prices, the best seats. So go check that out. You will save $20 on your first purchase with that promo code. Depending where you live, that could be a free trip to the ballpark, so don't miss out on that. If you're new to the series, what we do here is we go through the roster, we rank each position, how they stack up against the rest of the league. As we do that, you will be looking at my own custom Madden roster. So while this is a video game, they are actually my own ratings, and it's a nice little graphic to use to show how I perceive each player. And then after we get through the roster, we go through the schedule game by game, talk about this team's Vegas over-under and my win total expectations for this team. And now that we're getting up there in the power rankings, we are going to have to conversate about how this team could get into the playoffs and what they might be able to achieve if they could get there. So as we mentioned, the Buffalo Bills here do things the right way. They have really done a good job establishing a culture and really an identity, which most of the teams we've talked to this point might have strengths, but I think the Bills, and this goes a lot further than it might sound, but they know who they are. They have an identity of this kind of hard-nosed culture. They've really developed some players here that you would not have expected, which that's how championship teams get built, is you get a lot of production out of players that you wouldn't have expected. So it's going to be a good roster review here to talk about some of those players that have developed, some of those players that we might see develop. But at the end of the day, this team is going to rise or fall on the shoulders of Josh Allen. So that's a good transition here. Obviously, a lot to talk about with Josh Allen, so let's get right into it. He's going to come in 24th for me. Depending on your evaluation of Josh Allen, that might seem high or low. I can assure you that I am high on Josh Allen, and there's really two things you got to start with him that you just can't really go on Twitter without hearing. For one, you obviously the physical ability, and then the other thing is the accuracy. Well, the physical ability is so real. I mean, his arm talent, I can't sit here and tell you that any quarterback has ever even come close to being able to make the throws that Josh Allen can make. Not even Patrick Mahomes, you guys know him, and Aaron Rodgers, truther. Those guys are utterly ridiculous, but Josh Allen's, he makes throws, and I'm not talking about on the move, like deep throws and stuff. I'm talking about like accurate, tight window throws over the middle of the fields on like hitches, crossing routes. Like he just creates throwing windows that you just don't see out there. And that changes the game when you get into the accuracy conversation. Like, you know, we are hard on Mitchell Trubisky, Lamar Jackson, other quarterbacks for being inaccurate. And it's the same with Josh Allen, and perhaps we need to have that same conversation about Josh Allen. But for one, I think those accuracy concerns about Josh Allen are a little overstated. When I walk away watching every game he played this year, I don't walk away, and from his college tape as well, saying he's an inaccurate quarterback. I think his tendencies lead to a low completion percentage, and that's a different conversation about his processor. But as far as his accuracy, it doesn't really concern me as much as it does others. I mean, sure, it's not an elite accuracy, and it might be something that holds him back from ever being Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers, I'll admit that. But if he can be this team's Matthew Stafford with a stronger arm and more, running ability, I don't think the Bills are really going to complain about that. But the thing is that really separates Josh Allen is that a 65-yard post route, who this year should be to a streaking John Brown instead of to whoever the hell he was throwing to last year, Josh Allen, in his mind, that's a slant. That's how good his arm is. Like, when we talk about Trubisky and Lamar Jackson, we rip on them. That throw is just a, wild accomplishment for them. Josh Allen sees that as if he's throwing a slant route. It's almost like he's playing Madden, and throwing the ball 60 yards is the same as throwing 5 yards. And yeah, he might miss that 5-yard slant once or twice or maybe 3 times a season, and it really bugs you. But besides his arm, you also have to mention that Josh Allen is legitimately super athletic, like Cam Newton-esque athlete. He just deceives people with how fast he is, and then he also runs with power. He's got to make sure he takes care of the football, takes a few less hits, but he's a bigger guy. He can take some of those hits. It just adds to what he can do to create offense. The playbook that is going to open up here with Josh Allen and the things that he allows this team to do really gets exciting here, because his running ability is a complement to the run game here, not just in what he can create, but just the ability of him to hold defenders and open up lanes for the running backs, what it does for play action, the time it's able to buy off of that. But then you pair the fact that defenses have to be worried about his deep ball much more than Lamar Jackson and Mitch Trubisky, who I don't frankly really care what the numbers say. I've watched every game of all of these quarterbacks. I am much more confident in Josh Allen throwing deep than I am in those other quarterbacks. Where my concerns will come in with Josh Allen, and this falls back to a tweet I just had that was very controversial. I said, if you put Patrick Mahomes in a system like Kansas City, where they simplified what he has to really read and just let his physical ability shine like Patrick Mahomes, and if you gave Josh Allen a year to sit like Patrick Mahomes had, and you give him the weapons and play calling that Mahomes had in Kansas City, I don't know that we see a huge difference between Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. I'm not saying he would be as good as Mahomes or even win an MVP, but I think he would be in that conversation. And the reason I bring that up is that there is a large amount of people that think Josh Allen is already a bust. And I'm just going to wrap this all up by saying, yes, his processor is a concern. He does not necessarily go through his progressions. He does look to run a little earlier than you'd like. That's all very similar with my criticisms of Mitch Trubisky. We haven't even had our Bears deep dive. But what differs with me is that I'm willing to give him a chance off of what we've seen in terms of the throws he's able to make, how bad this offense was last year. There's like a 7-minute cut up here on YouTube of Josh Allen making just ridiculous Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers-esque plays, making good reads and going through his progressions, and receivers just dropping balls. Or not even reaching their arms out for the balls. He literally had nothing to work with. So with an upgraded situation here, it's going to be a super telling year for Josh Allen. And I think there is a lot of cause for optimism here, for development here. And it plays a big factor in my excitement around this Bills team. And I'm very excited to see what Josh Allen has to offer, because simply put, he's one of the most fun quarterbacks to watch in the NFL, and he has his holes. He's got his flaws. I'm not sitting here saying like what I said about Carson Wentz rookie year. I thought Carson Wentz was entering year 2, going to enter basically week 1 as a top 10 borderline elite quarterback. I'm not saying that about Josh Allen. I think, though, somewhere in that Stafford to Cam Newton range is where at the end of the day, Josh Allen's going to come in. You ask around Twitter and NFL Network and all these other places, you're going to get somewhere between the 26th and 40th best quarterback for Josh Allen. I think he takes a pretty nice step up and continues to look really good, because he really did look pretty good last year. Just the stats didn't back it up. And that's the problem with being a box score chaser. So that's enough on Josh Allen. Obviously, a lot of what we talk about moving forward is going to, be pivotal in terms of helping him out, both with the offense and the defense. As far as the backup quarterbacks, you got Matt Barkley, the, vetted, whatever, journeyman quarterback, whatever. And then Tyree Jackson was a very good free agent pickup here. He is like Josh Allen, has that ridiculous arm, is, supposedly fast. His 40 time was really good, and yeah, you get him in a straight line. Tyree Jackson's tape, he's not a very mobile quarterback. He's very flat-footed in the pocket. He doesn't seem to explode out of the pocket when he starts scrambling. I don't know. I don't really buy into Tyree Jackson, and you want to talk about, raw processors like Josh Allen. You got to, even worse with Tyree Jackson. But maybe they can turn him into something. He's got the tools. They wouldn't have to change their offensive play calling too much if anything happened to Josh Allen. So let's move on and talk about the running back. And this team's doing everything they can to make sure they have starting caliber running back play here. They are going to come in tied for 27th. They've got a bunch of starting caliber guys here, but it's nothing really crazy. Last year, this team had some injuries here. They had to fall back to Marcus Murphy, Keith Ford. They don't want that to happen again. They want to run the ball here, and they want to make sure that when guys go down, because LeSean McCoy is not exactly the living embodiment of health, they want to know that when guys go down here, they're able to plug in some starting caliber talent. So it does start with LeSean McCoy, who I will admit, when he was healthy last year, still had it in him. Had that explosion, the ability to make guys miss, and if you could be more confident in him to stay healthy, it would boost this running back ranking up, because we all know LeSean McCoy in his prime was one of the best running backs of the last decade, but you just can't really expect that. They would love it if he can stay healthy. I strongly, would bet against that. I hope he does stay healthy, because he is much more talented, assuming he does still have some of that juice left in him than what you have left. You got Frank Gore, another vetted presence here. I see, a timeshare there between McCoy and Gore. And then if anything were to happen to McCoy, I think we'd start to see a lot of TJ Yeldon on third down, a lot of Frank Gore on first down, and then they're definitely going to want to sprinkle in some Devin Singletary as well. They spent a third-round pick on him. I think they see him as a Kareem Hunt type of prospect. Now, I loved Kareem Hunt. I didn't quite see the same thing in Devin Singletary. Maybe I just missed it. I could easily be wrong. I don't see Devin Singletary as a, potential top 10, 3-down back, which even the third round in 2019, I think if you're taking a running back that early, you should see that upside in him. I just don't myself. Maybe I'm wrong. And then Centeries, Perry, Marcus Murphy, Christian Wade, these guys are going to compete. I wouldn't be surprised if this team kept 5 running backs based on how they're addressing this running back situation here. And then you also got to mention Patrick DeMarco, one of the 3 best fullbacks or so in the NFL. So they certainly have depth at running back. It definitely helps them out. If LeSean McCoy can stay healthy, this might be closer to like a top 15 group at running back. But I like their approach. They're not heavily investing in running back. They're using a mid-round pick on a guy. It's the right approach. I don't know if it was the right player necessarily. And they're not really overspending. They're bringing Frank Gore, TJ Yeldon. This is a lot better strategy than their division counterpart did with Le'Veon Bell. Bell's a great player, but I'd much rather spend that money elsewhere. So they'll be able to get the job done at running back. And then at wide receiver, a lot to talk about here. Bills fans are going to want me to start with Zay Jones. Look, I did not like him coming out. I think he's soft. I don't think he plays as physical as his size would denote. I think he ends up losing this job, and I don't think he is a starter on this team. But I will mention him first, because at the end of last year, he technically was this team's starter. I think the first guy you got to mention is Robert Foster. Undrafted free agent out of Alabama last year. kind of fell under the radar because you had Jalen Hurd at quarterback, who can't really throw an accurate football. They had, obviously, Calvin Ridley there as the team's number one. Robert Foster's a freak athlete in a very deep wide receiver class. There was a lot of wide receivers taken 5th, 6th, 7th round last year that I had 3rd round grades on. So Robert Foster falls through the cracks and really stepped up last year. Now, he's got holes. He doesn't have the best hands, but he can get open. You know, a good comparison for him really is Tyrell Williams, who just got a $40 million contract. So another undrafted guy. So I think that's a very good comparison for Robert Foster. A nice player. His speed pairs very nicely with Josh Allen, but his, hands and catch radius, if Josh Allen is going to miss by a little bit, you would prefer to have probably some better hands there. But you are hoping to have that in John Brown here as a deep threat. Now, back in his quote-unquote prime with Arizona, I thought he was overrated because people wanted him to be this elite catch-and-run guy, this versatile receiver. That's not what he is. He is a deep threat. He is a straight-line burner. Doesn't have the catch-and-run ability that a lot of people want to project him to have. His hands are fine. Again, like Robert Foster, it's not crazy. I think he does have better tracking ability. He's not going to out-physical anyone for the ball, but he might track the ball a little better. And he's someone I get really excited about, given everything I said about Josh Allen. Not really a surprise there. And, Brown was okay in Baltimore, but definitely underperformed because Lamar Jackson just isn't accurate downfield. And I get that the numbers might tell you that Josh Allen can't throw the ball accurately downfield. He can certainly improve there, but I frankly trust Josh Allen throwing a deep 65-yard post off of play action, like more than most quarterbacks in the NFL. So I think John Brown is going to have just a ridiculous yards per completion here. I think he's going to have a very nice role in this offense. I think the play action deep balls here are going to look really nice at times between Josh Allen and John Brown. I don't know if he's going to have 1,000 yards, if he's going to catch a bunch of touchdowns, but I do think he's going to open up this offense quite a bit. And then Cole Beasley is the complete opposite. He's going to develop some nice tendencies here for Josh Allen. For a guy that, might hold the ball a little too long, might be a little hesitant or unable to see that first read. When you have a guy that can get open underneath like Cole Beasley does, it helps you develop those tendencies to maybe hit that on first down and not end up with so many 3rd and longs. So he's going to be a really nice addition here. Then you also got to mention Ray McCloud, again, a slot guy. He's probably not going to play as long as Cole Beasley is healthy. And then Isaiah McKenzie, little undersized, what is he, like 5'7", but he did some nice things as a gadget player. He's another guy that I think it's going to make it harder on Zay Jones to see the field because they're going to want to do some creative things with him. Then you also have David Sills, really good undrafted pickup. He is unlike the other receivers here. You've got some speed and a lot of ability to get open, but David Sills offers that big-bodied red zone target, a jump ball guy, a back shoulder guy for 3rd downs. I had a 3rd or 4th round grade on David Sills. I think they got a steal here. I think they'd be dumb not to let him make the team. I mean, honestly, I would cut Zay Jones. I'm that low on Zay Jones. I would keep the 3 starters we mentioned. I'd keep Ray McCloud. I'd keep Andre Roberts as a kick returner. He's a beast as a kick returner. I don't want to lose Isaiah McKenzie's ability as a trick play guy. And I'd keep David Sills as your big-bodied wide receiver. I don't need Zay Jones in here taking up reps from all these guys. He's just not good. So then you've also got Damari Scott, Victor Bolden, Duke Williams, Nick Easley, Cam Phillips. This wide receiver room is just loaded. It's going to get thinner by the time training camp rolls around by the end of it. But, that's my take on the wide receiver room. Then you got tight ends. The starter, I guess, is going to be Tyler Kroft, who they signed from Cincinnati. Like, whatever. He's a tight end 2, in my opinion. He's going to be pushed in the starting role. He's about what they had last year, I guess, with Charles Clay. I like the Lee Smith signing. That guy's a really good blocker. He's definitely going to play a lot, especially given this team's, they want to run the ball. Dawson Knox, a 3rd round pick, lacked the production in college. Draws some George Kittle comparisons as a guy who's a freak athlete. When he got his opportunities, looked very good. Just was underutilized in a system there at Ole Miss who had 3 very good wide receivers and not the best quarterback play. So loved that pick in the 3rd round. Keep an eye on him. If he can win a starting job here, he could be a very nice addition to this skill position group that really was not addressed in the draft outside of Dawson Knox. You've also got Tommy Sweeney. He's pretty similar to like Tyler Kroft. He's going to come in here, block. He's all right. Jason Kroom, converted wide receiver from Tennessee. Will he make the team? Maybe. I think they either keep Kroom or David Sills. I would keep David Sills. Keith Townbridge, probably not going to make it. So the wide receiver room as a whole obviously improved from what they had last year, but it's coming from the very bottom. So 31st in the league, which is a massive step up. This is a tangent, but it reminds me of when my Twins used to be last in strikeouts every year, but they were last by they would be like 300 strikeouts behind 30, or I guess in baseball it'd be 29, and then 29 would be like 15 strikeouts behind 28. So the Bills were coming from just absolute last place in terms of the wide receiver room, and they're going to have a significant upgrade there, even if it is not one of the better units in the NFL. And then the offensive line, again, you can say the same, was a bottom 5 O-line last year. Much improved this offseason. So at left tackle, you got Deion Dawkins, who is a very good young tackle. I'd expect him to continue to grow. I think you have a franchise left tackle there in Dawkins, someone they're going to have to pay a lot of money, which is another reason you don't pay Le'Veon Bell as much as they did. Better to pay these offensive linemen. And then at right tackle, you got a question mark on who it's going to be. I think they're trying to figure out what Cody Ford is, if he's a guard or a tackle, a really good second-round pick. My personal opinion, this line would be best playing Ty Nsekhe, who they gave a good chunk of money to at right tackle. Now, he is a little older, though, so if they think Cody Ford has good upside as a tackle, it could be worth it, because then you'd have your franchise tackle duo around Josh Allen. So I totally understand why they might try out Cody Ford at right tackle. He played tackle in college. I project him more as a guard. I don't know if he has the footwork to play tackle consistently, but he very well could be something like a Trent Brown there without the height and length, a little quicker, but you get the point. So we'll see who ends up starting there. I think regardless, Cody Ford will start for this team, whether it's at right guard or right tackle. The only thing is, if Cody Ford wins out that right tackle position, I don't think you start Ty Nsekhe at guard. You probably keep Nsekhe as depth. So on the interior, you signed Quinton Spain and Mitch Morse. Big upgrades there. This center and guard position was a mess last year, as was the right tackle. I mean, I don't think there's an offensive line that improved as much as this one did this year, which leads to even more excitement for what Josh Allen's going to be able to do, because he's not exactly getting rid of the ball so quick. If you can give him a little extra time to throw, it's a big deal. So you got the center and left guard figured out, and then you're going to have competition at right guard. So maybe it's Cody Ford, like we mentioned. I think that's this team's best line for this year. I get the reason you might try Ford at tackle. But Spencer Long is a center from Washington, not very good. He's going to compete. You got Wyatt Teller, who started a bunch last year, Vladimir Dukas, Ike Botker, John Feliciano, even Jeremy Searles has played some guard. You're going to have a wide open competition at right guard if Cody Ford is that right tackle. And I think that would be a weakness if Ford was starting at right tackle. So we'll see what happens. It's a much improved offensive line. Like I said, they're going to come in 22nd. I think in terms of the run game, LaShawn McCoy and these running backs are going to be very happy to have a better line here, and Josh Allen as well is going to benefit in his development. So the offense certainly better than it was last year. It's still not great. They still have a lot of holes here. The receiving core, you don't have a true number one. You frankly don't even have a true number two here, though you do have a bunch of weapons to kind of move around and get creative with. So the offense as a whole coming in 28th. Now, if Josh Allen can take a step up, improve his accuracy rate, be more consistent with the help he's getting here, this could become, I think, a top 20-ish offense. I still don't think they have the upside due to a lack of, just good talent on this offense, like elite, star talent. They got a lot of talent in terms of depth, but they don't have any star talent. I don't think this team's ever going to be like a top 16 offense this year, But with Josh Allen's mismatch tendencies, I guess, this is going to be a difficult offense to play against. They should be able to come up with a drive or two every game based on the matchups they're going to be able to create with Josh Allen. It's just a matter of consistency with this Bills offense. And it is the offense that's going to take this ranking of 20 down a little bit because the defense is very good. They come in 11th for me with the defense. So let's start with the run defense here. Up front, you do lose Kyle Williams. He's been a mainstay of this defense, but I tell you what, replacing him with Ed Oliver, not a bad gig. I was very high on Ed Oliver. I had him essentially neck and neck with Quinnen Williams. The Bills, I think, just won the lottery when the Giants took Daniel Jones, when the Jags took Josh Allen. Ed Oliver should have been a top 5 pick. I mean, the guy is as close to Aaron Donald as prospect as you're going to find. Now, he's 2 years younger than Donald was coming out. He's not as refined as a pass rusher, but you want to talk about one of the arguably 10 just freakiest pound-for-pound athletes on the planet. You can't have that conversation without bringing up Ed Oliver. He is that ridiculous. And with this scheme and this coaching staff and what they've done with far less talented players from a developmental standpoint, it is terrifying to think of how good Ed Oliver can be for this team. And I really do think that if I had to bet on him becoming either, I don't know, Solomon Thomas or something close to Aaron Donald, I don't think anyone's ever going to beat Aaron Donald. Maybe Ed Oliver is. But if I had to bet on him being Geno Atkins or Solomon Thomas, I'm putting all my money on the Geno Atkins side because I think he is that talented. And it's not like he has bad tape. He was triple teamed all the time at Houston. He was the only guy that opposing offenses had to worry about. So, his name's going to come up when we talk about pass rush, but he's going to contribute in run defense as well. And then you got 2 really good interior guys here for run defense, Harrison Phillips, Star Lotulelei. Jordan Phillips can play as well. That was a good pickup getting him from Miami. So this interior defensive line runs deep. They've also got Kyle Pecco, Robert Thomas on the interior. And they play good run defense on the edge as well. Jerry Hughes, very good there. You got to mention Lorenzo Alexander and what he contributes as a flex edge outside linebacker, Trent Murphy. But yeah, the run defense, very good. Now, notice they come 26th here. Run defense just doesn't matter, simply put. This is a very good run defense, as we just mentioned, but everyone's got good run defense because interior defensive linemen like Star Lotulelei, like Harrison Phillips, like Jordan Phillips, they're just too easy to find. So yeah, they'll be able to stop the run just like everyone else that isn't last year's Chargers. And then the pass rush here, which is much more important to talk about, coming in tied for 14th. Jerry Hughes, perennially underrated. He, I would say, is a low-end number 1 edge rusher, which is not an insult. I don't just throw every normal pass rusher into that number 1 tier. There's probably 20 of them in the league. Jerry Hughes is one of them. He's getting up there in age, but I still trust him to be a positive impact on this pass rush. After him, though, you got some pretty big question marks. It is really going to come down to what Ed Oliver offers as a rookie. And we got to come back to Ed Oliver now that we're talking about the pass rush, because I think he has serious upside to be a defensive rookie of the year type of impact on this team. He's going to have to, earn that role as the interior rusher. He's going to have to beat out some guys here. He is a younger guy. He might be considered a little more raw, but I do have a lot of confidence in him to be this team's number 2 pressure getter. And that takes a lot of pressure off of Trent Murphy, Shaq Lawson, who just kind of do their thing as this team's number 2 last year. But if you're getting that extra added pressure up the middle from Ed Oliver, you got Jerry Hughes on the edge, this could very well turn into a top 10 pass rush pretty quickly if Ed Oliver is as good as I think he just might be. But we do have to take a wait and see approach with that. You also got to throw Lorenzo Alexander's name into the ring here in terms of pass rush. He's a very difficult player to put a name on, like what position he is. He plays a lot of hybrid. He'll come out as like an odd outside linebacker on the line of scrimmage as an actual edge rusher. He'll put his hand in the dirt and play defensive end. He'll stand up and just be an off-ball outside linebacker. He kind of does everything, but somehow at his age, he just defies the odds. He broke out in like his 10th season in the NFL. He is one of the most bizarre outlier players in the NFL, but he's a damn good player. And I frankly, I've studied his tape. It's hard to even put a finger on what he does that makes him so effective. I think he just tries harder than everyone on the field, and has gotten to a point where he's played so much football that he just knows where the ball is going. I think that's really as simple as it is, because he doesn't really have the physical traits to dominate in any specific regard. But he's a very positive impact on this defense, and I don't know if that's really going to change, despite the fact that he's, 36? Going to be 37 by the end of the season? So that's really it for the pass rush. I'm not expecting a lot from Mike Love, Latarius Walton, Daryl Johnson, a 7th-round pick, a little raw, Eddie Yarborough, whatever. The pass rush as a whole, though, very good, tied for 14th. Like we said, could become top 10 pretty damn quick, depending on what Ed Oliver does as a rookie. And then the linebackers here, it's a very good group of linebackers. Tremaine Edmonds, a little disappointing as a rookie. I fully expect at 21 years old, with his physical traits and a smart young kid with this surrounding help and coaching, I fully expect him to take a step up and get closer to that top 15, 16 range in terms of linebackers. That would certainly help this ranking of 20. And to be honest, I don't think by the end of the year 20th will hold up, because Matt Milano is a fantastic young linebacker, but a breakout in his second year. So you're projecting him to repeat that. That's not always steady from year to year, but I do really like what they have in Edmonds and Matt Milano, and I don't want this 20th ranking to reflect how I perceive the future of this team as opposed to kind of how I look at them right now. You also got to mention Lorenzo Alexander, like we just mentioned. I don't need to spend any more time on him, but he is technically the starter in base 4-3 defense for this team. The next guy I think you got to mention is Vosean Joseph. Freak 5th-round pick, kind of falls in that Deion Jones caliber athlete, raw guy coming out. Can they develop him to be a starter here? Base defenses just don't happen very often anymore. But I will say one team that does run base, or at least did more than most, were those Panthers teams with Luke Kuechly, Shaq Thompson, and Thomas Davis. That's where Sean McDermott was before he got this Bills job. They ran base more than most teams did, so maybe if Vosean Joseph can develop here, you do see that trio of Edmonds, Milano, and Joseph being one of the better linebacker trios in the NFL. So the future very bright here. You also got some depth here. Julian Stanford, Corey Thompson, Eli Harold, a journeyman who is on his 3rd or 4th team at this point, Dion Lacey. These guys are all going to compete for the 4th, 5th, 6th linebacker spots on this team. I will say Harold, a high caliber athlete, fits a similar mold as that kind of hybrid role with Lorenzo Alexander. So if it's going to work out anywhere, it might be here in Buffalo. It's done a good job with players like this. So they come in 20th. Factor in some progression here. This could be a top 12 linebacker unit by the NFL by the end of the season. I do think the upside is very high with Milano and Edmonds. They just need to show a little more consistency for me. Consistency for Edmonds, and I want to see it again for Milano, being a 5th-round pick in 2017 who had a breakout season last year. And then you get to the secondary. This is a damn good secondary, coming in tied for 7th. This is part of the identity of this team, is they've just kind of got this thing figured out. Trey White is their number 1 corner. Doesn't always grade out as well, but they put a lot of pressure on him to really take out wide receivers. He had, as a rookie, not just one of the best rookie seasons of all time for a cornerback, one of the best cornerback seasons ever as a rookie. And he's a 1st-round pick. He's physically gifted. His tape is fantastic. Just because he had a down year last year, I'm not ready to say he isn't in the same conversation for a top 10 corner. So he's very good. You've got an excellent safety duo here. Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer. they're just a mainstay at this point for this defense. Two very good free agency pickups have a very nice role within this defense. They're both flexible. They've both played corner at a time in their career, but they're also both rangy free safeties and can come up and tackle. Like, they're just both, very good hybrid safeties that allow this defense to do a lot of different things, show a lot of different looks. Neither are elite, but both are very, very good. And then you got a lot of corner depth to talk about here as well, because both Teron Johnson and Levi Wallace played outstanding last year. Teron Johnson in the nickel is one of the rising young, nickel corners in the NFL. He was a couple, pick sixes in primetime games that you just don't get with the Bills, of him being in the same conversation as a fourth-round pick to a guy like Desmond King. He fits a similar mold to that type of player. I really trust him as a starter for this team, probably in the slot. He might be able to step outside, but you got Levi Wallace. It's kind of funny because on both sides of the ball, we talked about Robert Foster being an underutilized, underrated guy out of Alabama. Well, they were able to pick Levi Wallace up as an undrafted free agent, and he just balled out. I mean, he's a freak athlete with size, 6 feet tall. Really makes you wonder how this guy out of Alabama wasn't considered a second, third, fourth-round pick, because that's what he played like as a rookie. So I like that young trio, but they weren't done addressing this secondary, which I love. I mean, how often do we talk about on this team, like, just keep throwing darts at corner? Like, it's a position where these guys get hurt a lot. They're very slender. The best teams in the NFL last year, the teams that were playing in the conference championship outside of the Chiefs, who just had a historic offense, the Patriots, the Rams, and the Saints, look at their offseason transactions. They're throwing darts left and right at corner. They're just loading up at depth at those positions because it's a very important just position to have. And a lot of times you start 4 of these guys. So they go out, they get Kevin Johnson, who, you might not want him starting, but as a 4th or a 5th guy, he's a former first-round pick that's had his time in the sun. They bring in E.J. Gaines, who can play. They have Lafayette Pitts and Ryan Lewis here. And then you still got Raphael Bush, who played well as a veteran, although I don't know if they see him as a guy that's going to contribute again this year. We'll see about that. And then the safety depth, Ciaran Neal is a kind of hybrid linebacker type that this team took in the 5th round last year. Does he get on the field as kind of a nickel linebacker? They seem to want to fill that role, as they also have Mo Alexander coming in here. And then they also had a good 6th round pick in Jaquan Johnson. I see him as a guy that's going to learn from these veteran safeties and has potential of a starter down the road. Doesn't have the physical traits you look for, but a playmaking type, really good ball skills, can learn from a guy like Micah Hyde, who has had a lot of success in the NFL without being a freak athlete. So more of a developmental guy there, but I like this secondary a lot. We put a lot of emphasis on coverage, and this team can do it, and it's definitely going to help this team out. So like we said, the defense as a whole does come in 11th. If they're playing at home, it's a top 5 defense. It's as simple as that. It's just a matter of when you go on the road and, you might be on the field a little more because your offense is struggling a little more. They're on the field a little more. They might not have the collection of stars to really be a consistent top 5 defense, something like a Chicago last year, Jacksonville the year before that. But it is a super solid defense, and my goodness, do I not want my team going into Buffalo to play them. As far as the coaching culture is concerned, it definitely exceeds where we rank this team in terms of the positions, right? A lot of these positions are coming in the low 20s, but the coaching culture boosts this all up. So 15th for overall coaching culture. I actually have them 23rd for offensive coaching culture. I think this offensive staff did an excellent job last year. I think Brian Daboll is a rising name that we could start to hear a lot of. He actually got very creative with Josh Allen and did a good job simplifying things for him, which you do need to do with Josh Allen. So 23rd for the offense, and then tied for 5th for the defense. I mean, you really can't complain about what Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier have going here. As far as the coaching itself, top 3, I would say. You might ask for some better leadership and star talent to really make this an elite culture. But, I mean, it is borderline elite as a defensive culture as it is. So let's wrap this thing up, go through the schedule. They're going to be playing in New York for the entire first month of the season, which is nice. They got to go to the Jets, though, who do have a lot of hype. I did put a question mark next to these first 2 games. So they're going to play both those first 2 games down the road at MetLife, at the Jets, at the Giants. A little interesting. That's going to be a pretty decisive thing for this team. If they can pull those wins off, which I think those are probably 3-point spreads. It could really go either way. If they can pull those off, the next 4 weeks are not bad at all. Cincinnati, I gave them that win in Buffalo. They can get to New England, especially early in the year when New England, they kind of take the first 6 weeks of the season off because they know they're going to win this AFC East no matter what. And that's really held up over the last few years. So I think early in the year in Buffalo, they can get to New England, win a low-scoring game there. At Tennessee, we gave them that loss. And then they got Miami to come into town, give them that win. Philly coming to town, I gave them a loss there. And then Washington. So first half of the schedule, not that bad, actually. Like we said, if they can win those first 2 games, they could really get on a roll here. Then they do have to go to Cleveland, go to Miami, put a question mark next to Miami. Denver, at Dallas, Baltimore. All right, gave them those wins at home, but not an easy stretch at Pittsburgh, at New England, and the Jets to wrap things up. So pretty easy schedule, all things considered. The over-under is 7 wins. I'm saying no bet here. It's not easy to start on the road for 2 games. It's very doable. I see this team, if you did have to bet, I would go over because the schedule's not that bad, but I'm just going to stay away from this. I think 7 wins is a very respectable season for this Bills team. If they can find a way to start 2-0, though, and really get on a roll and get Josh Allen cooking a little bit more and get him into that top 15 quarterback range, that's when you start to have a conversation about, can they go into Miami and win? Can they go into Cleveland, go into Dallas and win? Beat Philly at home, go into Tennessee and win? Those are the types of wins they're going to need to get over the hump here and make the playoffs here. I really like their future outlook. At the end of the day, I think they still need to put more star talent around Josh Allen and just figure out what they want to do with this offense down the road. Get a little less gimmicky and be a little more consistent. That could be this team's downfall this year, but overall, I think a very optimistic outlook for this Bills team. Please let me know in the comments what you think, whether you're a Bills fan or not. I love interacting with you guys. Again, please do hit that like button. Go check out my Twitch. We're going to have another live stream rebuilding the Cardinals tonight. Twitch.tv/ThatFranchiseGuy. And that's really it. Cheers as always, guys. Peace out, and we'll see you next time.